In today's video, how to get shredded without losing and maybe even building some muscle. Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com. Today, I'm going to give you some very specific advice on how to get shredded, keep muscle, perhaps even build muscle. And this is something that I do not only with myself every time I diet down and try to compete in a competition or get ready for a photo shoot, because let's be honest, building muscle is a son of a bitch, and I really want to work hard on making sure I'm keeping it. And something I've also noticed is that I'll actually tend to put on some muscle once I start a fat loss phase, and I'll explain why that might be. And I want to talk about specifically things like diet, like cardio, like training, like our approach to the process, how fast we should be losing body fat, how we set up our plan week over week to make progress. And the question comes from right here on my Instagram direct message, which I'll put on the screen. And I want to read the question for you guys so you understand where I'm coming from. I had a question for you. I watch your videos about losing body fat. My goal is to get to 10% or close by July 4th. I'm about 17 to 20% right now. Started working out again, and after detrained for about 2 to 3 months, setting up my macros, I'm worried I'm getting too much protein and carbs, but also don't want to lose what muscles I have in a cut. Any advice would be helpful. Protein 150, carbs 100 to 200, fats under 50. So these are some great pieces of information. When you guys send these questions, it really helps if I get the full picture of what's going on, because I can give you a lot more specific advice if I understand things like your weight, your goals, and even things like your nutrition, which this gentleman was kind enough to give me. He didn't really give me his weight. He just simply said he's at 17 to 20% and he wants to get to 10%. So I don't really know what his weight is, but I'm gonna guess his weight is around 150 pounds because he said he's getting too much protein. And typically, if you're getting a gram per pound, that is considered kind of normal. So getting too much would be more than that. So let's talk realistically about what it takes to get from 17 to 20% body fat to 10% body fat. It's a complete lifestyle change for anyone out there. And I want to keep this video very short and very brief. So I have some free tools for you guys to use. I have a free beginner's guide to working out. I'm going to link it below in the description box. It's just a free program. You can download it. It's got some nutrition advice, some training advice. My baseline, without having a conversation with every single one of you, because that's very difficult to do, but that's what I do with my clients, and everyone at ProPhysique does with our clients. I can't understand what your kind of love or admiration or desire to eat protein is like. So let me just put it like this. Set your protein at the weight that best represents you at 10% body fat. I'm just gonna guess and say for you to be 10% body fat, you're gonna need to be 125 pounds based on some information you gave me here. I would say bring your protein down to 125. That is the baseline. You're gonna keep it there the whole time. Why? Protein is what keeps muscle. It's what builds muscle. And you said something else to me in this, that you're kind of new to resistance training. You were detrained. So that there's a good possibility that we're going to be adding muscle during this process. And what I don't want to happen is for you to not have enough protein to recover. Protein is the building blocks for muscles. So the next macronutrient that I want to focus on is your fats. I don't want fats to get too low, okay? Fats are responsible for many things. They help with things like digestion, but they're also a huge part of our hormonal system. So if you strip away fats too low, there can be some negative consequences to that. So I would not go below, for a man, 40 to 45 grams of fat per day. Can vary depending on our goals. I don't want to be too specific, but that would be my basic guideline. The next would be carbohydrates, and this is where we can get into some pretty big variables, but carbohydrates are anabolic, okay? Understanding that your performance in the gym is often going to be directly related to just how your carbohydrates are set up. Are you eating prior to meals? Are you going into workouts very flat? So carbohydrates are going to make up the rest of the calories that you need for your deficit. Now, how many calories do you need for a deficit? I have a specific video on that called How to Create Your Caloric Deficit. I'll link it in the first comment and also in the description box below. That's going to give you like exact numbers on what you should be eating. This gentleman says he's between 100 and 200 grams of carbs per day, which I think is totally reasonable. So how do we ensure that we're not losing muscle? First things I want to say is muscle is pretty resilient. Building muscle, it's very difficult. Adding more muscle is something that can take months and years. Keeping and maintaining muscle, it's actually pretty easy. Some of the research shows that you can actually maintain muscle on as little as 3 sets per week for that muscle group. That's it, 3 sets per week to maintain what you built. I myself have experienced this as well. As I've been lifting for over 25 years, I find that I'm able to maintain my muscle so much easier than I am able to progress my muscle, okay? That takes extreme effort, adding sets, adding weight, kind of always progressively overloading your system for years at a time. But to maintain that, man, I can just go in the gym a couple days a week without really killing myself, and I maintain all that work that I put in. So what does this tell me? This tells me that if you are going through a cutting phase, you're not losing muscle as long as you're getting in the gym and training in a similar fashion that you were before you started cutting. We run into problems when your energy dips and when you start changing your training. Don't do high reps for the cuts, okay? Try to keep your strength. Now, this is where nutrition comes into play. Are you getting some carbohydrates in before you train? Are you spacing out your protein out through the day to make sure you're getting muscle protein synthesis? All these things are factors, but protein and muscle go hand in hand. So make sure you're getting enough protein. Make sure you're training. You're not going to lose muscle. It's not going to happen. How do we keep muscle while stripping away body fat? In my mind, the magic tool is low intensity, steady state cardio. Why? Low intensity, steady state cardio, the primary fuel source used is body fat. As the intensity of your cardio increases, the fuel source changes. Now, if you are going to do high intensity intervals like sprints, you're going to use a lot of glycogen. It's a carb-based exercise. Now, you are still creating a caloric deficit, and over a 24-hour window, you will still lose weight, you will still lose body fat, but you're also going to feel really beat up and run down. High intensity cardio is hard on the body. I prefer, if we use low intensity steady state cardio, a nice caloric deficit, which I'll explain more in a second, and resistance training to keep muscle while we're getting leaner, okay? So now let's talk about the calorie deficit. How much of a deficit should we be in? Well, a lot of this is going to come down to how much time you have. You've given yourself until the 4th of July. That is a nice time frame for you to lose body fat. You should be dropping on the scale 1 to 1.5% of your body weight per week as a leaner individual. It can get much higher when you have a lot more body fat. The less body fat you have, the slower the process is going to be, but even losing a pound or 2 pounds a week of weight on the scale is going to be very significant. So this is going to be how I want you to set it up. You can probably initially just set it up by bumping up the cardio. If you're doing none, just start with 15 or 20 minutes a day. Okay, and if you're doing 15 or 20 minutes a day, try adding 5 or 10 minutes a session. You're gonna have to be accountable to yourself week over week, keep track of these things. And if you're losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, you're gonna be seeing some amazing things as you get closer to this 10% body fat. When the body fat starts to come off, you'll start to notice some improvements in things like, the visual changes in the gym, how your clothes are fitting. Look for signs that body fat is coming off where body fat resides. Lower abdomen, lower back, upper thighs, the glutes. These are typical areas that store body fat for both men and women, and you'll start to notice some of these changes. You might also get some people in the gym. So how do you keep muscle and lose fat at the same time? Well, you do it through diet and cardio, okay? You keep lifting, lift hard. You can actually build muscle in a caloric deficit, especially if you're supplementing properly, if you're training hard, if your nutrition is on point, and you don't have a long history of bodybuilding or resistance training, your body is gonna be able to put on muscle pretty quickly. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for me today. I hope you guys have an awesome Saturday. Download that free ebook if you have any more questions. There's also one on flexible dieting, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.